So hi Narghiza. Welcome to the Fluent Life and welcome to Talk with Titans. So this is a show I'm sure you would know, and this is a show where we meet industry leaders who are going to talk to our audiences, talk to me, and talk to the audiences via me, basically to make them understand how communication skills are important, not just in India. It's not just an Indian problem. It's a global problem, and I'm sure we couldn't have found a better guest who can probably have an influence in the society globally. Being a CFO of a big company, it's great for us to have somebody from the finance background, because usually people believe that people in finance are only on their computers and not really speak to
The
people.
math all day.
Yeah, do the math all the time, find out formulas, and so it's great to have you here. Probably, I think the folks that we have, our customer base in the finance background, will probably get a lot of inspiration out of you, and probably start working on their skills as well. So I'll first give you a little introduction about us and for the viewers here as well. So Fluent Life is basically a product of You Favor EduTech, and I'm part of the founding team. And so we specialize in personalization of education, and that's something that is very dear to us, and we believe very deeply as well that any kind of learning experience is only going to be profitable in the long run if it is very personalized, right? So it has to be one-on-one, it has to be max 1:2. But the classroom sessions of one to many, where there is one teacher, many students, classroom, benches, blackboard, etc., is a very age-old tradition, and that is something that has not changed for the last 200 years, right? So that is something that we want to change, and those kind of learning experiences are not any more efficient, and we want to make it efficient, and hence we are in the hyper personalization sector. So with Fluent Life, what are we trying to address is that we are trying to address a very common problem of communication, and so we want to make this world a better place, and we want to make everybody a better communicator, and that's how that's how we can drive employability, that's how we can drive everything. At the end of the day, we are humans, and humans are only going to thrive if the human connection is very high. So connection starts with communication, and that is something that we are really striving for. So yeah, so I would be happy to invite you to our viewers as well, and I would let you introduce yourself and probably all your credentials as well, so that everybody gets a gist of who you are.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me in this show. I'm very, very privileged. I've heard a lot about your endeavor and the initiative and what sort of value add you deliver. And hence the reason why I've signed up for this. I am Narghiza Ergashova. I'm Sydney based. I'm an ex C-level executive that have now moved on to her own business that supports startups that are set to disrupt the industry. Have been in my business for about a year. Since become also a massive LinkedIn influencer, ranked about 160, somewhere in top 160 level, and have been in that communication space for a little while. So you and I have a lot of synergies in that subject line alone, because I believe you have tapped into one major gap larger universities, in fact, most of them haven't been able to address. When you have a lecture room of 40 come in and out, do technical subjects and walk away with very minimal level of actual communication, you literally train people to do technical work and trying to think technically without being able to articulate that expertise beyond their own workstation. So you are to be congratulated for tapping into that particular niche sector, which is very, very important, and developing that skill is paramount for anyone's career.
Absolutely. I mean, thank you for saying all those kind words. That's really good. But yeah, as you rightly said, it's paramount for anybody's careers, and they will just directly jump in and address the elephant in the room. So, uh, unemployment is a huge problem. I think, especially with COVID coming into picture, it's just taken the unemployment scale to another level altogether. But I also fear, I mean, I have this theory, it's very personal, but I have this theory, in my opinion, that unemployment has to be solved, but at the same time, there is another problem called underemployment, which also needs to be solved, right? So I'm an engineer by education. I usually call myself an accidental engineer. I mean, I became an engineer because people told you have to be an engineer. So an engineer in my from my batchmates as well have eventually gone on to do jobs that they have practically have zero training in, right? So I think underemployment is a far bigger problem in terms of deterioration of an economic perspective. The world will eventually doom it day by day if people are lesser and lesser skilled, and if people are lesser and lesser, inclined towards upskilling themselves. So the jobs, from a career perspective, there are two problems. There are jobs will eventually solve the unemployment part, but I think people themselves have to solve the underemployment part as well, right? So that is a major gap. People do not, of course, people do not get hired well, and that's the start. So you do not get hired to the company that you're looking for, and since you spend too much time being unemployed, you are settling for an underemployment as well, right? So you're settling for a job which is far lesser. I mean, basically, you're too overqualified for a job, right? I mean, I know so many people who are in that space, right? Who are basically overqualified for a job, and that underemployment is also a problem. Even in this company, I take about 12 interviews a day. I'm sure you must be taking a lot of interviews as well, and I consult a few startups in this sector as well. So the primary problem for every other company in the world, no matter, I mean, be it from the Apples and the Microsofts to Googles to the smaller players as well, hiring is a major problem, right? I mean, I think that is one thing that nobody has really found a formula to. Right. So hiring is a major problem, but because hiring is got to do with humans and humans hiring humans, and it's going to be, so you can never find a formula. You can only keep getting better at it, delta by delta. So how important is communication skills in hiring? I mean, we all take interviews, we all reject a lot of candidates based on communication skills. I mean, I do a lot of them. That's the basic that we look for, that you have to be decently being able to, no matter how good the CV looks, I would still want you to meet me and sell yourself, right? So that is something that we are completely hell bent on. But I'm sure it is in the other part of the world as well. But yeah, if you could just throw some light on how important is communication skills from a very hiring perspective.
Absolutely. Look, you've touched on two separate issues which I'd like to address separately, and perhaps commence off with what you qualify as underemployment. Um, I think it would differ from country to country, to be honest, and I can only project on, I guess, an Australian market by using my own experiences. And my experience is that you go through 4 to 5 year academic education through university at a university level where you probably have very minimal communication within the cohort of 40 in a classroom where the only person that speaks laterally is your lecturer. That kind of does not exactly equip you with communication skills. And let's not touch on the actual expertise, because often you come out from an accounting degree not knowing where to start or what accounting is all about, because it's really theory and theory only, which has very little nexus to what happens in real life. But then the next part of the journey is you pick up your next phase of your education through your membership. You have to become a membership of a body that puts you through another 3 to 5 years of another formal education where it's one way, either digital or lateral speech, where one speaks, the other just listens and digests. And guess what happens afterwards? If you're lucky enough, you get selected by Big Four. Big Four are larger corporate organizations that perform audits on the rest of the companies, and you start from the ground zero. And again, you do all the slaving and hard yards and all the background work and analytical stuff. You never get to talk. At which point in time you get released to the market, and then you hit the interview floor and you realize, damn, one thing that I needed, I've never learned.
True.
Technically, it's unfortunately in this whole cycle and value chain, is in nobody's particular interest to give you that skill set. What drives these industries are financial incentives, not necessarily getting you equipped to go and survive. That's the brutal honesty of how this world unfortunately works. And therefore, when you do hit the interview floor, this is probably the first time you realize how important that communication skill is.
True.
Followed by when you hit your year 1, year 2 of your employment, and you realize that those that have had the privilege of going to the right schools or having the right environments have progressed much faster than you have, even though your levels of expertise outweigh those that speak better faster than you do. So there's got to be a balance, though. You don't want to be ultimately labeled as the bullshit artist. There's no credence to what you say. You've got to walk your talk, but it's important you talk your walk too. So you're absolutely right in terms of pumping out graduates at any level, being undergraduate, being postgraduate. Unfortunately, none of our education systems are geared to support that kind of communication level that would see you progress to the levels, if you're ambitious enough, required. It is ultimately up to you to build that down the track. That's issue number 1. Now, issue number 2, hiring process. Look, I'm pretty skeptical of the whole process because in Australia it's highly unregulated. There's a lot of notions around, rules and regulations put in place against ageism and sexism and discrimination. But believe me, this is the most discriminative process you can ever imagine that one has to go through to get a job. And in fact, you are encouraged to go and, fix up your resume on each instance. By the time you fix it up 99 times to fit 99 jobs, it does not resemble anything you've done or authentically represent your skill set. It's quite sad. And unfortunately, the process is broken and requires far more intervention than it has had historically, at least in our markets in Australia. You have to check out my post today. My post today was exactly on that subject line, where I've been brutally honest in suggesting that not every rejection is you or about you. A lot of the rejections are about the flawed process, biased perception, and just being very, very subjective about the whole journey.
True. You're right. Basically, hiring is unregulated everywhere, not just a particular country, but hiring is just generally unregulated because of a lot of reasons that is basically incomprehensible to a individual, and probably you can never be able to standardize it by creating a certain formula, right? So you can probably work on large data and large patterns, but you can never probably fix it to a formula and then make it technologically driven, right? It never works that because people are different. 7 billion, 8 billion people are very different from each other. And I think we are perhaps probably the only species which are absolutely unique to every other person in the planet.